If I was selling my house, the only tool, I would get a CMA from my realtor. I'd get a comparable market analysis. It'll show you the average days on market. It's going to show you the average list price, the average sales price in homes that are actually in your neighborhood.
I would probably look at days on the market because buyer and seller, that matters to both. I would probably look at absorption rate. I know that the general public doesn't have knowledge to that, but that's going to be a good indicator whether you're a buyer or seller, if you're in the better position or not. I would be looking at those things.
Yeah.
So she's the boss.
The boss.
That's why I'm the boss. No, I'm only the boss because I'm the oldest.
The best tool to use is our newsletter.
The newsletter.
That's what I was going to say.
No, it's my idea.
Sometimes it helps to have the right tools for the job. And the job is, when do you buy in real estate and what tools and trends should you be looking at? So in this episode, we're going to discuss that and more. The Den, powered by the Lions Group, a show that explores trending topics in real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. We're a small team of professionals with over $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 successful transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
We have a new podcast room.
Oh, you know what? Thank you for that.
Did you not notice?
What a makeover.
I know.
I
I like these chairs.
Someone found a paintbrush and some tools.
They get the comfy couch. I get the swivel.
I do, yeah. A little bit of rocking back and forth. The girls get to do crisscross applesauce on occasion. So we are excited to have a new look for the Den. And if you saw the last podcast or the previous podcast, just delete those. We're going to put those, we're going to archive those. But full circle back. Speaking of tools and the tools we use to redo this podcast room, let's talk about the tools that you could use as a consumer or a realtor in the space, in the real estate space, to really identify what the market is doing and really understand where the market is. Why does it seem so easy for some people to buy and sell real estate? It's almost like they hit the jackpot over and over again. What if I told you anyone can have those same results? But there's a secret recipe to do just that. We're the Lions Group, the go-to source for all your real estate needs. Located in northern New Mexico and southwest Colorado, we pride ourselves in creating seamless and successful transactions for our clients. We take the time to share the secret recipe and give you an advantage in today's market. At the Lions Group, we make it a priority to truly understand your needs. That's why we offer private consultations just so we can dig deep. Based on that consultation, we do the heavy lifting by developing a strategy specific to your situation. Ready to find out how we can help you achieve your real estate dreams? Go to sjcbroker.com to see our informational video series for buyers and sellers, or check out our links in the show notes below to schedule a private consultation with any one of our partners. So the kickoff question is, Paul, coming to you, big boy, hand me the rock. If you were looking at the market as a whole and deciding whether to purchase or not, or just trying to understand the market, what tools would you be? The
best tool to use, that was a long question, dude. The best tool to use is our newsletter.
The newsletter.
That's what I was going to say. No,
it's my idea. So every week, the Lions Group puts out a newsletter. There's 6 trends that we follow on there. They are inventory, days on the market,
list price,
good
sold
Lord.
price.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the new listing average.
Yep.
There's the absorption rate. We have the average list price. I think I said that already. Average sold price, and then the
inventory levels, right?
Inventory levels. Yep.
Okay.
And those are good indicators of how the market is doing, whether it's a good time to sell. We watch those. It's pretty much those 6 we watch pretty closely to see, when we're seeing how aggressive a seller needs to be, seeing if, a buyer's money goes a little bit further. But those are the pretty much the tools that we use.
So let's break down some of those just for the audience so they understand a little bit more. You mentioned absorption rate. Mm-hmm. Anyone want to give a crack, or Paul, you want to talk about what an absorption rate is?
An absorption rate is if we were to take the amount of inventory on the market at this moment in time, don't add any more inventory, how long would it take for all of those properties to sell?
So give an example. So like if you had 100 homes on the market right now.
So say right now our absorption rate that I pulled up for this newsletter was 3.38. So in 3 months and
a third,
whatever, but a third, 3 1/3 months, all of that would be gone. So out of 186 homes that we have on the market right now, in 3 1/3 months, they'd all be gone.
Okay. And so an absorption rate for the audience really is an indicator on whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, because the shorter the absorption rate, in other words, how fast the market would move the inventory, means that it's typically more of a seller's market. There is an equilibrium point, which is between, I think, 5 and 6 months. Would you concur with that? About 5 and 6 months, it's really not a buyer's market and it's really not a seller's market. If the absorption rate is up at 9 months, then guess what? It's a buyer's market because those houses are sitting. And that's a good key indicator to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Helps really think through for a seller or a buyer, like, where is the market currently when in regard to the absorption rate? So that can right there shed a lot of light on what's going on. What about list versus sales price? Shannon, you want to give that one a crack?
Well, we were actually just talking about this morning, and as of right now, what did we say? It was like 97.7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 97.7% of the sales price is what it was listed for. That's pretty impressive for sellers, or maybe it's impressive for us that we're getting it right.
Yeah.
that we know where the market is. Yeah. So I would say we're still in a seller's market, obviously.
Okay. So when you say 97.7% for the audience, what does that mean? Like, give an example of what that would mean.
So if you're, just for a round number, if you are selling your house for $100,000, just chances, I'm not saying it's all science because sometimes you may go over or under, but you can expect with the trends where the market is right now that you might sell it for 97.7 instead of 100,000, 97,000. So we're getting pretty close to what those list prices are. Usually when you're in more of a buyer's market, you have a lot of more negotiating that goes on, for the sellers. So they would maybe be getting, 90% of their asking price. But right now they're getting on average 97.7, which is pretty amazing, I think. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think that's a great, for sellers especially. I mean, and the key delineation is these are homes that have sold. Right. You don't use a list to sales price ratio for homes that are active, because if your home really is $100,000 and you're priced at 150, you're going to get 63% of your 66% of your asking price. But having said that, a list to sell ratio like that is really a good indicator. Like you said, 97.7%. You can expect if you price your home properly, it's going to sell, and you're almost going to get asking price in most instances. Aspen, what are some of the key indicators that you look at when you're trying to figure out the state of the market?
I think just what you said, and we kind of have mentioned in a previous podcast, as long as you list a good product, it's probably going to sell, especially how we are now. I do think, it's not necessarily real estate, but interest rates go hand in hand with it. So I do think even though we're at like 3 months of inventory, we're seeing where buyers are asking for a lot more because interest rates are high. Maybe they need help with closing costs. They need to buy down, some points buy down. So I think that is also a really good indicator to follow versus whenever, interest rates were really low, we were able to price it a lot more aggressively and almost guarantee getting an offer.
Right.
Do you look at inventory levels at all? Because remember back in the day, we would hover between 800 and 1,000 listings. Mm-hmm. And now in San Juan County, we're down closer to 200 in a normal range.
We haven't hit 200 in a while.
Yeah. So
I do look at it, especially if it's in the same neighborhood. If you have a house pop up right across the street and you were going to price it 50,000 more, you're probably going to have to adjust it down a little bit. But as far as right now, like the whole county, not necessarily. I just look close by, see what things have sold for, how quickly they're selling.
Yeah. And you can take a quick snapshot, because if we've been hovering around or under 200, right, Paul? And then all of a sudden we have 400 homes on the market and go, whoa, now the market has to have softened a bit right? I mean, would that be a fair conclusion?
Mm-hmm.
So if you pay attention to the inventory levels, that could really help out. Do you ever watch the Zestimates?
No. Days on the market is one of the things that I look for. And we can see, if you look at my newsletter, we can see for the last few months,
newsletter. Did you guys catch that?
The Lions Group newsletter, sorry.
We know who does all the work.
I know, Aspen does, apparently.
I made it. Just kidding.
Another thing to pay attention to is days on the market. And over the last couple of months, it's been steadily going up. We're in, I think the last one was 65 days on the market. So as that goes up, it means houses are sitting longer. It means I use that one more to say we're trending towards a buyer's market, because the longer they stay on, the more sellers get a little bit more willing to negotiate. Buyers are, have the ability to bring that price down a little bit. So days on the market and that sold to list price percentage are the two that I look at. And then the other ones that we don't necessarily have numbers on are, like we were talking about earlier today, appraisals are starting to come in a little bit lower. Those are anecdotal things that we watch out for. And the other is fall through rate. Like we see back on the markets all the time. So I think buyers right now, because prices are so high, they're saying, okay, wait a sec, I'm not going to buy. So inspection comes back bad, they're going to be like, I'll just walk. We see a lot of sticker shock. I didn't know that I'm buying this little Mossman and it's going to be $2,400 a month. I'm not going to buy. I'll keep
people
renting.
get a lot more particular about getting all the way to the closing table when those factors are in place, when it's costing them more money monthly, when it's costing them more money to get in, prices are higher already. People start getting a little more picky, when the market's all in their favor, of course, well, we can live with that. That's not a big deal. We can refinance later. There's a lot of those things in play, but I think right now that's what's playing a lot into it.
Yeah, their threshold of pain per se really goes down when you're saying like it's a smaller home, it's a Mossman home that you'd expect the payment to be $1,500, $1,800 a month, and you're $2,200 or $2,400 a month for a home that used to be trending that way,
or like $700 a month.
They're $700 a month. Yeah, that's many years ago, and people's threshold for like, okay, that's it, I'm done. Unless it's absolutely perfect or you're going to fix everything,
right?
Then I'm going to back out.
That's what I was thinking. That the cost, if you're having to put all of your, even if you can't afford it monthly, if you can't afford to save anything, you can't do the repairs. So what if something comes up? What if you need to do a new heater or a new cooler or a new roof, something big? Yeah. You don't have the money to fix those things, which is really important when you're buying a house.
I heard an interesting statement the other day from a seller. He was actually selling in a different market, and it was a bigger metropolitan area. And he said, I was just keeping my eye on the Zestimates. That was his indicator. That was his tool. And he goes, at first it was at, 525, and then that was 6 months ago. And then I checked 3 months ago and it was at 450. And then I just checked again, it was at 415. And I'm like, wow. So like in a matter of, 6 months, less than a year, the Zestimate had pulled your value down according to their automated valuation model, $75,000 to $100,000, which is pretty significant. Now, how much stock do you put in the Zestimates?
Not here, but if I was in a big metropolitan area with 100 homes that have sold in the same one, all it is square footage and price that's sold. That's really what it is. Maybe bedrooms, but I would probably follow that if I was a seller instead of having to call my realtor every time just to see. And then you can call them and verify that it is trending. But if you have a cookie cutter house in a huge neighborhood,
right,
it's probably pretty accurate.
Pretty spot on.
Yeah. Here, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have wildly different properties all over.
Yeah, in one neighborhood over, it could be
completely different. Yeah.
How about the heat maps? Have you seen those? Where they layer, especially in the metropolitan areas, they layer these heat maps, and it can show growth in certain areas. It can show values. You can put all kinds of heat maps. It can show crime rates, school valuations, I guess, or what are the schools?
Ratings.
Yeah, ratings or scores. Those are pretty interesting, especially if you're in a bigger city, you have the ability to have a few more tools, and those tools are a little bit more dialed in than probably what we have access to just being in a smaller community. And things aren't as, like you said, you don't have 1,000 of the same style of homes. And so there's a little more limited information.
We also don't really need those tools because it is a smaller town. I know what's going on in a neighborhood across town because we're not that big. Right. So I don't need to keep a finger on the pulse because we already have it just by living here.
Yeah.
Versus if you were in a huge city with millions of people and thousands of neighborhoods, you can't expect to be a expert in all of them. So you probably need to keep up with your tools a little bit more.
Yeah. And part of that is all the tools that we're looking at have, hey, this is the state of the market right now. But what are some of like the leading indicators of what can we expect the market to be over the next few months or even potentially a year? We're probably looking at interest rates, maybe some shadow inventory with foreclosures. Do you ever look at the reports for, delinquencies? Have you seen those? So some of the reports come out and they say so many people are delinquent on their mortgages. And then you can kind of gauge, oh my gosh, there's remember when we had the big rollout of mortgages after 2008, where there was just foreclosures after foreclosures, and those, they didn't let them all in the market at one point. We saw the wave coming, but they didn't release them all because they didn't want to take the loss on the books that quarter. So they would spread them out over the next few years. Do you guys pay attention to any of those type of leading indicators?
I used to think that the amount of foreclosures or pre-foreclosures on the market was a good indicator of, I don't know what it's an indicator of, but, over the past 4 years or so, we haven't had foreclosures very much. So there's a huge backlog of homes that they're trickling out into the market. Once they open the floodgates for that, there's going to be a ton of them. Like I'm seeing a few of them, and we're getting calls to do some valuations on them, and I'm getting calls quite a bit on give me a repaired and as is valuation, and so they're coming, but we don't have a lot of foreclosures now.
I think that's one of those things that probably sounded good on paper. And then whenever it actually came out, it wasn't as good of an idea. These rent moratoriums, mortgage moratoriums where you weren't having to pay, which sounds really good if people are, laid off from a job or they couldn't work, due to COVID. Yes, it sounds good to hold off on these, but realistically, most people in the U.S. live paycheck to paycheck. You would hope that they would save that, but if you're having to pay for groceries that are going up or your utilities, you're probably not saving that like you should have been. I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, I think what most people thought is, oh, good, I don't have to pay my mortgage for a few months while this is going on. The truth is that as soon as they released that, they wanted their money, which I think they thought those would just be bypassed and they just, they would still have those payments maybe at the end, but that's not what they were doing. They were saying now that your time period for that
it's all
is
due
over
now.
with, now we want it. Yep. But of course, if they didn't have the payment then, they don't have 5 payments later.
That's also one thing I think you can't expect people just to understand or know. Even it's like whenever you have a kid going from high school to college and they go and get a loan, they don't really understand the implications of it because you've never done it before. So I think that people probably were making up scenarios in their mind. Like you were saying, it'll probably be on at the end, or it's just going to get forgiven. Or I think people probably made up scenarios in their head.
People really thought that that's what was happening. And they just did not realize that, when we pull the rug out from underneath this, everything that you haven't paid is going to be due. Yep. The interest.
Everything. Yeah, exactly.
What was the word for that?
What?
During COVID when they said you didn't have to pay?
It's kind of a moratorium, I guess.
It wasn't a moratorium, but there was like started with an R.
Relief?
No.
COVID relief?
No, but anyway, I had a few people that tried to sell during COVID and they had, 4 or so months and they said, all that's due right now. So all of a sudden they're underwater when they're trying to sell their house.
Yeah, and we're seeing now the graphs are showing like delinquencies and our country right now went into credit card debt big time. So over the last few years, And
Us too.
Yeah. Part of the reason has just been inflation, right? I mean, inflation went through the roof. So like to your point, Shannon, like people are like, okay, I got to choose between this and this. I'm getting groceries.
Yeah.
And if I have to put in my credit card, I'm doing it.
My grocery bill tripled. I don't know if everyone else's in the last 5 years. It has, and granted, the kids are getting older. They're eating more, but it has easily tripled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was looking back at a memory popped up on my Facebook, and I used to try and be very frugal and stuff whenever I was a lot younger. And I used to be able to get a whole month's worth of groceries for me, Bryson, and Logan for $100.
Wow.
Granted, it was being super frugal and saving, but I remember I could go to Sam's Club and fill up my cart overflow, and I would know it'd be about $300.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is...
You can carry $300 in one trip now.
In one bag.
Your bag's in one hand, just one trip from the car. You've got $300.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to sound like the rest of us. I remember what a candy bar was.
Yeah.
Or a gallon of gas was $1.
Well,
I remember that.
Remember when it was.
That wasn't even that long ago.
I know.
Yeah. I came back from boot camp. It was 89 cents. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, this is great. Well, you didn't know then. You're like, oh, it's good. But, you had no idea it was going to shoot to where it's at. Yeah. So no more toilet papering or egging houses.
Oh, no.
I mean, dude, what are you doing?
That's
child?
It's like throwing gold at a house. Why would you do that?
Me out there with a net just trying to catch them.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like people that were driving around with wood in the back of their truck. Like, quit bragging.
Well,
get it.
I did accidentally buy 13 dozen eggs.
Right?
Did you?
And I remember that.
I was giving them out. So good.
But that's another trend to watch for, is because COVID has now passed and it's been a couple of years. Those are going to be called due. Those will probably be a large amount of foreclosures. That's going to be another trend that we're going to see. As those are released into the market, always keep in mind, those become comps. Not direct comps, because we don't want to comp, your arm's length transaction to a foreclosure, but they do become sales on the market. They do set the tone for the market. And I remember last time we had a lot of foreclosures on the market, that was kind of the baseline for the pricing. So, we might see, so as those flow on, we might see a little bit of relief on these sales prices.
So do you think we have a pretty good size of shadow inventory that's going to be coming down as foreclosures?
It's hard to tell. I don't know.
Especially because they don't all release at once. I mean, we could have a bunch and it could be released over years.
And you also consider a lot of those people who are in that pre-foreclosure because of COVID, say they didn't pay their, mortgage for a year, and now they're kind of at odds with their mortgage company about, I don't have the money to pay that back. If they're in a good position, they can just go refinance and take care of it. Yeah. So some of those might drop off, and because they end up staying in their house.
Yeah. But a lot of those people had 2.5%, 3.5% interest rates too.
Yeah.
So that's a big,
that's hard to swallow. Yeah. Why would you want to refinance that?
6% right now. That's and again, what you had said before, we had seen that a couple of times. First with the short sale over the years after, 2008, the market crashed. There were so many people underwater. Short sale was the thing. Like we were trying to work with the banks and buyers to, buy it and not go through the full foreclosure process. Then it was, remember this one? Then it was the down payment assistance program, the first time homebuyer initiative that they put out. And oh, by the way, if you sold your home within, I think 2 years or whatever, you had to repay all of that subsidized down payment. And that was killing people. And so now we just have we have the COVID R relief. What is it? Come on, boy. Aren't you doing some research?
Googling it.
Googling it. So we have the COVID R, where people just thought, yeah, I can take 4 or 5 months off without paying. But now those 4 or 5 months have accrued interest and they're going to be called due. And if you're stacked up with, we didn't know inflation was going to go through the roof. You're stacked up on your credit cards and
you had to use that money for, like you said, groceries, utilities, kid stuff. An emergency, you had to replace something. You're like, oh, I have this cash, but I'll save it. I'll save it back. And it's hard to do when everything's tight.
Yeah.
Especially during COVID, a lot of people didn't work.
Yeah. And if you actually weren't working, you didn't have that money coming in. So you didn't even have the money to save.
Yeah. There was nothing there to lean on.
And I know it's, years ago now, but also it's very much still affecting people.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That kind of a financial disruption in your life doesn't get settled in a few short years for the average person. I mean, very wealthy people will be fine and overcome it. But the average person that's living paycheck to paycheck, they don't overcome that in 3 or even 5 years. You know, it takes it's like paying off a house or paying off a student loan. It takes forever because you don't have that much money to put towards that deficit every month to make up for that.
Exactly.
Well, hold on one second.
It was not an R, it's an F. Forbearance.
Forbearance.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
Do we all know it? It's just
Right.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
So the COVID program, starting with an F, that gave you the relief on your
Forbearance.
Forbearance. What is forbearance? Come on, Paul. You watch Jeopardy. No. Okay. He's more of a Wheel of Fortune guy. Well, we need to wrap up the conversation. This is great because these are all tools and trends that you can pay attention to as a consumer to be able to say, okay, what's kind of the state of the market? You know, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Is it trending one way or the other? No one has a crystal ball, but these are tools and trends that you should be paying attention to. So hopefully some of this conversation helped you out in that regard. Speed round real quick. Shannon, I'm going to kick off with you. What are the top couple of tools you would use primarily to see the current state of the market? And what would you pay attention to see kind of a trend?
If I was listing my house?
Well, if you were listing or selling, just to kind of understand the state of the market.
I would probably look at days on the market because buyer and seller, that matters to both. I would probably look at absorption rate. I know that the general public doesn't have knowledge to that, but that's going to be a good indicator whether you're a buyer or seller, if you're in the better position or not.
You can always call your realtor and say, what's the absorption rate?
Absolutely.
Right now?
Yep. You don't even have to know that. Just call your realtor and say, is it a good time for this? Well, let's talk about your situation and we can find out in your situation if it is or not. So
always making great points. God.
I would be looking at those things.
Yeah.
That's why she's the boss.
The boss.
That's why I'm the boss. No, I'm only the boss because I'm the oldest.
Let's not go down that road.
Let's go back to that
Ninja.
podcast.
Yeah, let's just move away from that one. Right. Ninja.
She's still mad at you.
Aspen, what are your thoughts?
If I was selling my house, the only tool I would probably use besides the newsletter and a local person, obviously, if you're in a different city than us, it's probably not going to be super relevant to you, but I would get a CMA from my realtor. I'd get a comparable market analysis.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it'll show you the average days on market. It's going to show you the average list price, the average sales price in homes that are actually in your neighborhood. So honestly, that's the only tool I would use because that's really going to give you everything you need to know. And you're going to have a personal touch added to it.
Yeah, great point. But if you were buying...
If I was buying, I just work with a realtor and find someone you like and trust because we can't expect people to know all of this information. Like we know it because it's our jobs, but I think, I just don't think you can expect people to know everything. So if you're working with a realtor that you trust, that's literally our jobs to help you. So you don't have to know all of that.
Gosh, it's hard to argue with that point.
Right.
Paul Berry, hand me the rock. What are your thoughts?
I agree with what they said.
Yeah.
In the newsletter.
Shocking.
So, any place that has an aggregation of data is probably the best thing. That's updated pretty frequently. I think for me, days on the market is one of the biggest ones. I can tell, whether it's going up or down, what the market's doing. And then one thing is interest rates. If the interest rates are going down, usually days on the market will go down. Those usually correlate. So in a nutshell, that's what I look at first.
Great answer. So, and I think I would take pieces of all of that. I think that there's enough tools out there for you as a general consumer, whether you're looking to buy or sell, that you can look at it and say, okay, here is the days on the market. Here's the average, maybe the list to sell price, but you really get that from your realtor. So I go back to what Aspen says is call your realtor and have a conversation because they're the ones right in the numbers. We have access to all these numbers at our fingertips, but I would also pay attention to the trending some of the online valuation models. I know this is probably going to be not favorable because we don't put a lot of stock in those. However, they are a good indication of where the market is going. And they kind of, they bring in and what was the word you just used?
Aggregate.
It's an aggregation of all the information. Thank you for that, Paul.
And those tools are getting better over time. They've gotten a lot better than they were just, 3-5 years ago.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a great way to go. So if you're just looking for a quick snapshot, I think that's a great tool to use, and you can kind of see what the trends are. Once you get a little bit more serious, or if you just want to have a conversation, call your realtor. Whether you're buying or selling, they're going to give you some insight to that. So great conversation today. Hopefully that helps our audience. If you are looking to buy or sell in today's market, go to sjcbroker.com, reach out to any one of the partners here at the Lions Group. We'd be happy to help you. Whether it's commercial or residential, we can give you an advantage in today's market. Go to our Facebook page, like our Facebook page, sign up for this fantastic newsletter. It's fantastic. A wealth of knowledge. It's beautifully designed, but there has to be an engine in it as well. It has to look good, and it also has to drive well. So go sign up for our newsletter. Sign up for our TikTok. Of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den, powered by the Lions Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed, and check the show notes below for direct links to our buyer and seller video series. The buyer and seller video series can give you an inside track on taking the right steps in real estate. If you'd like to learn more about the Lions Group or to schedule a consultation, go to sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lions Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in the Den.